Thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're looking at a Titan build that was made with an eye looking towards next week's DLC release. This build leverages a lesser used exotic glaive to give ourselves self-sustain through infinite void overshields on demand, while using those overshields and survivability to massively increase our damage output. While this build is fantastic for the current sandbox, you can use it right now if you want. Edge of Fate's artifact and melee buffs are going to make this build crazy. Like a constant 370% melee damage increase crazy. And that's including the nerf to melee stacking. So if you're curious about this Titan build or looking for something to have ready for Edge of Fate's launch, you're in the right place. But before we begin, as usual, as a Destiny content creator, there are timestamps and a dim link down below for your convenience. That way you can just grab the build. And if you enjoy this video and want to see my builds and informative content for Edge of Fate next week, then make sure you subscribe. But now on to the actual build. What do we start with? Well, it's going to be our exotic weapon, and that is Vexcalibur. This Void Glaive comes from the Avalon mission, and I actually featured it in my top 5 mission exotic video that I just put out. If you're curious about where it ranked, go watch that. Now onto what Vexcalibur does. It's actually quite a bit. Its main perk reads, fires a spread. Equipped with a quick draining shield, blocking damage with your shield gradually bestows void overshields to yourself and nearby allies. Now we can see this in game with first its unique firing, and that means that Vexcalibur is essentially a shotgun rather than the usual single projectile that glaives are known for. Also, because we are firing lots of projectiles at once, you can really build your entire shield in just 1 or 2 shots. Much quicker than a normal glaive. As for the second bit about void overshields, we can see that as we hold a guard, a void overshield begins to grow on our health bar. And this will proliferate to any teammates in about 10 meters. This overshield is incredibly potent, as while active, your health bar has a 70% damage resist. And while it does gradually generate, it isn't an instant full void overshield like most other sources. This is still very powerful. And the reason lies in its second perk, which reads, deal additional melee damage while protected by an overshield, defeating targets with melee final blows while the overshield is active will refresh it. So kind of skipping around, the main thing is refreshing the void overshield. And as you can see, once we have any little bit, getting a melee kill will refresh the entire thing as well as giving us max timer. This means that as long as you get glaive melee kills, you should always have a full void overshield. Also, on the note of a timer, if you're running around with a void overshield, you can just tap guard to instantly refresh that to max time. But now for the increased damage while you have an overshield, here we can see our base glaive with nothing, dealing 25,000 damage on the third hit of the combo. And then once we have a void overshield, that goes up to 30,000 damage, making this a flat 20% damage buff. Now this 20% isn't anything to scoff at, and we will be using that to maximize our melee damage and ensure that we are incredibly lethal even in end-game content. And then the last bit is that you can choose an optional perk as its catalyst. In my case, I go Grave Robber so that any melee kills we do get, which is going to be a lot, reloads the weapon. But that's all there is to say about Vexcalibur, at least on paper. There is one more hidden thing regarding this exotic, and that's in its name. This weapon is especially potent against Vex. If you look at the melee damage we did against a red bar here, we dealt 5,000 damage. But then if we move further into the Lost Sector and deal damage to a red bar Vex, we deal 6,300 damage. This is a flat 25% damage bonus against all types of Vex. And I did hear a leak going around that the next raid is going to be a Vex raid. Also, this hidden functionality was actually buffed recently to match Malfeasance and Wishender, which are especially good against Taken. But this special effect, we're not going to worry about it too much. Now though, on to the next melee damage increase, we have our exotic armor piece. And while I wish I wasn't using this exotic yet again in another Titan build, I want to give you guys good builds. And this exotic is simply a little overpowered to say the least. Of course, I am talking about Synthoceps the Exotic Arms. Its perk reads, when you're surrounded, gain increased melee and super damage, as well as improved weapon handling and reload speed. Now in game, you can see this very plainly, as when we have 3 or more enemies around us, we get the Biotic Enhancement buff. And now the third hit of our melee combo deals 60,000 damage. That is a 100% increase over the last number we saw. But here's where we get to mention our first buff coming in the Edge of Fate next week. And that is Synthoceps will be granting glaives 165% increased damage rather than just 100. This buff, alongside many others that we'll talk about, is just one of the things that allows this build to deal way more damage next week. Now, I don't want to dwindle on Synthoceps long, so instead we're going to move straight into the subclass where a whole lot more damage increases come from. But first, our abilities. We are on Prismatic, and our super of choice can really be a few. I'm always bouncing between Thunder Crash, Blade Fury, and Glacial Quake. Any of these are suitable, but I find myself running Blade Fury for survivability reasons. Then moving on, for our class ability, I tend to run Thruster simply because it has the lowest cooldown. And then for the melee, this is a tough choice because usually you're not going to do anything with it. That's because the glaive melee is going to override it, but when you're not using the glaive, I do think Frenzied Blade is still Titan's best melee. It's going to sever enemies, increasing your survivability. It has 3 charges, and it also is just a good source of damage. And then for the last ability, we have our Grenade, which I tend to use Glacial Grenade for maximum amount of Transcendence energy possible. After our abilities, we have our aspects. The first one, and the most important one, as it's all about melee damage, is Knockout. This aspect activates upon breaking a shield or getting an enemy below 30% health. Once that happens, our melees deal more damage, and melee kills will heal us and amplify us. In game, we can see Knockout proccing, and that's actually it. This aspect doesn't work with glaive melees for now. This is all changing in the Edge of Fate. Glaive melee kills will become a source of amplify and health regen, and Knockout will increase glaive melee damage by 160%. That's effectively a second Syntheseps for free. Right now, our max damage is 60,000, getting bonuses from Synthos and the glaive itself. In Edge of Fate, that's going to be 80,000 from what we have now, plus Knockout, and we haven't even capped it out yet. But before that, we have our second aspect, which can be switched around, honestly. I chose Drenger's Lash to assist with crowd control, and so we can stun unstops from our subclass kit. Remember, Shatter doesn't do that anymore. This aspect, when paired with Thruster, drops a suspending bomb whenever we use our class ability. And in-game, we can see this here pretty easily as we use our Thruster, and we drop this little thing that suspends Carl. Now, to finish out the subclass, we have our Fragments. First is Facet Protection. This is a prismatic staple, and we run this for the 15% DR when near enemies. Then we use Facet of Hope, which will expedite our class ability cooldown whenever we have any kind of elemental buff. And after that is Facet of Purpose, which will give a different buff depending on your super when picking up an orb. The most useful one we can get is Woven Mail from having Blade Fury equipped to stack even more damage resist. And after Purpose is Dawn, which makes us radiant when dealing powered melee damage. Glaives right now don't count, but they will next week with Knockout. And then lastly is Facet of Blessing to begin health regen on melee kills. But if you want to save this for Edge of Fate, change Facet of Blessing to Facet of Grace, so glaive melee damage gives even more Transcendence energy. Yes, they do count as kinetic. Now moving on from subclass things, we have our other weapon options. For our kinetic slot, use Tenacious Mastery, or don't. Your other weapons, heavy included, don't actually play a big role in this build, and should just be catered to champions or bosses and your activity. This is also where I should mention though, Winter Bite does exist. It's the heavy glaive, it does a ton of damage, and it's going to deal a bit more than Vexcalibur. But it does come at the cost of Infinite Void Overshields, your heavy slot, and the neutral game. But if you're thinking your survivability is fine, you're a good player, I'd say try and swap the two and see how it goes. But then on from weapons, we have our armor. And the first thing I want to say is that you can use an exotic class item with Syntheseps if you have one. I used the Inmost Light plus Synthos combos, but all you need is Syntheseps for this build to work. So you can pair it with whatever you want. That means check out your vault and see if you got a cool combo like Abeyant plus Syntheseps. As for the big question with armor, the stats we focus now are Resilience, Discipline, and Recovery. But in the new stat system coming next week, we will want max melee and health, and the rest with an even distribution if you can manage it. In current armor, that would look like max strength, resilience. And then of course we have the armor mods. On our helmet, right now we run Siphons from weapons, but in Edge of Fate that will be hands-on for super gen from glaive kills. Our arms will be 2 heavy-handed. Our glaive melee should spawn a ton of orbs. Our chest will be for resist. Make sure they match whatever activity you'll be playing. Our legs will be a recuperation, an innervation, and an absolution, so we get instant health and a chunk of grenade and class ability on orb pickup. Do note that recuperation shouldn't exist in Edge of Fate, as it is just becoming part of the health stat. And on the class item, a special finisher for infinite special ammo, a powerful attraction to pick up orbs whenever we thruster, and a proximity ward to become invincible when finishing enemies. And then the last bit before the gameplay loop is our artifacts, plural. Pre-Edge of Fate, make sure you run no bell, and that's about it, because this gives us 80% free melee damage after blocking any type of damage with the shield. This makes Vexcalibur deal insane damage values, as you see us here pretty much 3-tapping Carl. But as for the plural artifacts, in Edge of Fate's artifact, Shield Crush is returning, which will give us increased melee damage while we have a void overshield. Last time this was plus 25%, and I expect it to be much the same here. It's going to be very good for this build. And then to end it off, we have the gameplay loop. As with every good build, it's pretty simple. Start off by using Vexcalibur to get a bit of energy, and then use that energy to get any amount of void overshield. Once you have that overshield, just melee everything. Kills will be refreshing your overshield, regenerating your health, and by simply being near enemies and getting melee kills, knockout and syntheseps are increasing your damage. The void overshield keeps you alive, and any extra DR you get on top of that is fantastic, whether that's rogue and mail or amplified. Generate transcendence via shooting or using your abilities beneath the glaive, and pop that when you have it. You don't necessarily need to spam abilities with transcendence, it's just going to make you tankier passively. Do the same with your super, using it to get yourself out of a pinch or to deal with champions and many bosses. For as long as there are things to kill, you will never die. Just keep meleeing and keep killing things. That's really the whole loop. And yeah, that's actually it. Again, this build is pretty good now, but it's becoming fantastic next week. As usual, there's a dim link down below, and thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. If you want to support me and support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription goes a very long way. And if you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below King Arthur. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.